Maxence Lacroix to Chelsea, 52 million. Let's discuss why Chelsea signed him. Now, right off the bat, one of the most interesting aspects of this potential Lacroix signing is that his profile is often misunderstood. This may be part of why the reviews and opinions, definitely including mine at first, were so mixed. At first glance, Lacroix looks exactly like the archetypal wide centre-back. He's quick across the ground, aggressive indoors, comfortable defending large spaces, and possesses the recovery speed that modern coaches crave. Those traits naturally lead many people to categorize him as a wide centre-back. In reality, his profile is arguably closer to that of a CCB, a central centre-back. It's a similar misconception to what existed around Chalobah during his early years of development. Because Chalobah is physically dominant, incredibly athletic, and fast over distance, many assumed he would naturally thrive as a wide centre-back. However, his best football has consistently come from central positions, where he can read the game, organise the defensive line, and use his athleticism as a safety net rather than constantly defending touchline spaces. Lacroix falls into a similar category. While he possesses many traits associated with wide centre-backs, his overall game is actually better suited to operating centrally. That distinction is important because it addresses one of Chelsea's more subtle squad-building problems. For much of last season, Cole was effectively the club's only genuine central centre-back. The issue is that Cole's only position or form of usage isn't restricted to just being a CCB. Cole's passing range and ability to progress play from the left side can equally be incredibly valuable, used as more of an LCB as seen for Brighton under De Zerbi. Now, it's important to make the distinction between his LB-LCB usage as seen under Poch and being an LCB in a back 3-4 where you still have a left back expected to handle majority of the wide defending. Enzo Maresca experimented with exactly that idea during the early stages of his tenure. The concept was understandable. Cole at left centre back, tossing centrally and Wes Fofana on the right. On paper, it offered balance. In practice, it never fully convinced. The problem was largely structural. Tosson is a CCB, but he lacks the mobility required to cover large spaces in an aggressive defensive setup. Now, with Cole also not being the quickest left centre-back when isolated in transition, the overall balance of the backline often felt fragile. The pieces simply did not complement each other. Now, insert Lacroix into that central role and the picture changes significantly. Suddenly, Chelsea would have a central defender capable of covering ground aggressively, protecting space behind the line, and compensating for moments when teammates step forward. Pair him with an athletic right centre-back such as Wesley, Josh Achimpong, or even Reece James in specific situations, and Cole's role at left centre-back becomes far more sustainable. The overall structure becomes faster, more dynamic, and considerably more balanced. So right off the bat, Lacroix's profile offers value that extends even beyond individual quality. And beyond the tactical doors that he opens, another big thing to focus on is something that we've definitely lacked for years, and that's reliability. How often have supporters actually seen a fully fit Cole and Fofana partnership establish rhythm together? How often have Chelsea been able to rely on their intended depth options without injuries disrupting plans? Even Badiashile, who was initially expected to become a foundational piece of the project, has struggled to provide consistent availability. The consequence has been a defensive unit with an extremely volatile floor. On its best days, it can look solid. On its worst days, it can look alarmingly vulnerable. Very simply, Lacroix helps solve that problem. He raises the minimum standard of the defensive group. He provides a dependable starter-level option who is Premier League proven, physically suited to the league, aggressive in his defending, and capable of being a leader. Those qualities may not generate headlines, but they are often what separates stable teams from inconsistent ones. Now, what I will say is that for me, unless Chelsea are going to fully trust Josh Achimpong, who still looks a little bit raw, we probably should still keep Fofana. Fofana remains the highest ceiling defender. Despite his injury struggles, he still possesses traits that suggest genuine, serious potential if he can remain healthy and iron out errors as he heads into that prime CB age. Let's never forget that run of form next to Chalobah against the likes of Barcelona or Arsenal when we drew 1-1, or just that period under Maresca where we had like 5 out of 6 clean sheets. Fofana has definitely had loads of ups and downs, but I've tried to not be too harsh on him because I do also understand when you're not next to that pillar centre-back, the leader CCB, who in our case is definitely Colwill, and I can give you other examples. If you think about Gabriel without Saliba or Konate without Van Dijk, you usually don't get that same level of performance either. So, although I do understand why fans are frustrated and tired of him, you think about the sloppy mistakes, you think about the injury issues, and just his attitude at times, I do think it's logical to probably give him at least another season, especially now that we have a better manager. When you think back to Maresca's first season when Cole and Fofana were together, I think we were second in the league in December. That was probably the best defensive period we've had in the last 2 years. So now that we have Lacroix, so we don't have to be overly concerned if he gets injured, and of course Josh is there as well, I think this is the perfect season to kind of really give him his last chance. And obviously if he fails this season or it doesn't go right or if he gets injured, I absolutely agree with you lot. So now if we have Lacroix and obviously keep Fofana, In tandem, they would be Colwell's partners. When Colwell operates as a central centre-back, Fofana becomes the ideal partner because of his athleticism and ability to defend large spaces. Now, when tactical circumstances require Colwell to shift into the left centre-back role, Lacroix can occupy the middle and provide the stability that makes the entire structure function. Fofana and Lacroix's usage becomes situational rather than hierarchical. Perhaps most importantly, neither player is so established or of similar age that they block the pathway of Josh Acheampong. Chelsea's long-term future should still involve Josh receiving significant opportunities. For now, however, the ideal development pathway may be as a hybrid right-back, right centre-back, kind of in that position that you might see from James where he sits. And I think obviously with James being injury-prone, there's definitely scope for minutes there. But otherwise, we do know that there is talks of him potentially going on loan. I know Crystal Palace are interested, so we'll see what happens with that. But I think long-term, keeping that pathway alive and not signing a young, upcoming centre-back is definitely smart. So even outside of just pure talent or who Lacroix as a player, he's immediately a player who already improves balance, increases reliability, and gives Chelsea far more tactical flexibility across multiple defensive structures. For a team attempting to build a sustainable platform for the future, that may prove more valuable than we realise. Now more onto his actual on-pitch, squad and individual value. In my mind, right off the bat, I think he would be virtually replacing Chalobah's minutes from last season when you think about how much he featured. To Chalobah's immense credit, he was one of our most reliable defenders throughout the campaign, played significant minutes, remained available when others went, and consistently stepped up whenever the team needed him. In a season where injuries once again ravaged the defensive unit, he deserves his credit for that. There's an argument that you could actually say Chalobah was maybe our most dependable defender over the course of the year. The problem is that he was frequently asked to perform a role that doesn't naturally suit his strengths. When Cole was missing large periods, Chalobah often found himself covering central centre-back responsibilities. He did everything he could to fill the void, but there's just certain limitations that become difficult to hide when operating as a defensive pillar of a team. Firstly, just to put it simply, Chalobah is not a natural centre-back. He can play there, he can perform adequately there, but the role asks for specific qualities that have never been the strongest parts of his game. For a player of his size, he's never been particularly dominant aerially. That became a significant issue for Chelsea throughout the season, especially when defending their own penalty area. Far too often Chelsea looked vulnerable when crosses entered the box. Opponents found success attacking second balls, winning aerial duels and creating chaos in situations where elite defensive units typically establish control. Now, while those problems were certainly not Chalobah's fault alone, they highlighted the limitations of using him as a central reference point of the defence. Now, aside from just the technical or physical characteristics needed to play the role, just as importantly, the role requires leadership. The best central defenders do more than defend. They organise, they communicate, they take ownership of the defensive structure around them. They become the reference point everyone else follows. Chalobah has other positive qualities, but he has never looked like that type of defender. He feels more like a 1B centre-back than a 1A. A player who complements the leader rather than becoming the leader himself. When Cole was unavailable, Chelsea's lack of a true defensive organiser became increasingly obvious. The backline often felt like a collection of individuals rather than a unit operating under one commanding presence. This is where a player like Lacroix becomes particularly interesting and valuable. When Mark Gahey left for Palace, Lacroix increasingly emerged as one of the leaders of Glasnow's defensive unit. He became a player teammates relied upon to organise, communicate and take accountability. Those characteristics should not be underestimated. Chelsea have plenty of talented defenders, but what they've lacked is availability, consistency and leadership. And Lacroix potentially improves all three. Then just as a player beyond his athletic profile, one of the biggest attractions is what he offers inside the penalty area. As you can see from the data, Lacroix ranks second in the Premier League for box defending. Crystal Palace's defensive structure under Oliver Glasner may have enhanced some of those numbers, but the underlying performance remains extremely impressive. Without Colwell, Chelsea lacked a genuine box defender capable of consistently dominating aerial situations, attacking crosses and bringing authority to defensive chaos. Lacroix seems to offer that. He's aggressive, proactive and comfortable embracing responsibility when defending his own goal. We've touched on his recovery speed earlier in comparison to someone like Tosin in that CCB role. We've talked about the leadership and obviously comparing that to last season where that was just one of the most glaring, big issues with no one taking responsibility for everything going on in defence. And then obviously we talk about the box defending, which again was such a big issue, conceding so many embarrassing goals in our own box. As you can see, Lacroix seems to almost pretty much address all of them. And this is why it's very important to look at context when evaluating transfers. So consequently, I'm much higher about the deal than maybe I would have been without diving deeper and really looking into why Chelsea are going for him. And for a team whose biggest defensive problem has consistently been instability, he may prove to be one of the most important upgrades of the entire summer. Now, to round this off, do I think Lacroix is going to be some crazy ceiling raiser signing, almost like Virgil van Dijk was for Liverpool, and completely transform our defence? I'm not so sure about that. Now, I do have some suspicions that in Alonso's structure, he might look better. I think Alonso's structure is quite compact, and it reminds me of a lot of Tuchel's defence, where you saw the likes of Christensen and Rudiger kind of go to another level. I think with someone with Lacroix's physical gifts, that could suit him a lot, where you now maybe don't have to focus on reading the game, etc., and all of that as much. But would I say I'm happy with the signing? Yeah, because at least he addresses direct issues we've had and solidifies our defensive floor, which in truth is what this window should be about. Chelsea have the talent and loads of extreme highs. Think about what we did against PSG, what we did against Barcelona and certain other games. The problem is our lows are just crazy, and the fluctuation is too drastic for a top team. And signings like this, signings like Lacroix, his age, his maturity, PL verified, etc., for me, they directly address this and just stabilize our floor and make us a little bit more consistent. Now, the one little thing that I will say about this Lacroix signing that does concern me a little bit if he's the only CB we bring in, is that I still don't feel like we have a build-up leader to replace Cole if he goes down and gets injured again. If Badiashile and Tosin deservedly leave, Levi Cole becomes the squad's only specialist possession-oriented centre-back, and that is a dangerous position to be in, especially after what we experienced last season, trying to play out from the back without him. If Cole were unavailable for an extended period, who replicates his role in possession? Who becomes the primary distributor? Who progresses play through pressure and leads build-up? Now, Lacroix alone, for me, like I said, does not solve these questions. And I feel like the club are aware of this, which is why we tried to be smart and get John Stones. But obviously, it looks like John Stones is heading off to Inter. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Chelsea address this. Could Anselmino be an option? I think the only concern with him is just that he's very injury prone. But he actually did impress when he was at Dortmund. And we know that he's quite good on the ball. So maybe he could be an option. But I will be honest, it is a little thing that's concerning for me, which is why initially, if I'm being honest, I did want Chelsea to hopefully maybe go for someone that has that ball playing part to their game as well. But listen, we got Lacroix. Like I said, I've mentioned a lot of the reasons it's a positive signing. It's just something to be aware of, and I wonder how Chelsea maybe go about addressing that. And it could be the reason we did see earlier links to someone like Jacobo Ramon, who I think is a little bit better on the ball. So that will be a little one to keep an eye out. That's the one thing that does make me a little bit nervous. But listen, let's see what Chelsea do, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, man, Maxence Lacroix to Chelsea. Yeah, man, I'm not too bad about the signing. Chelsea have got that defender that we needed in. We've at least got the profile in. I'm happy about that. Got Rodgers, got Palestra. Obviously, we're seeing the likes of Henderson and Welbeck coming, who I don't even really want to take in, but they're obviously here to kind of bring experience, etc. And we'll see what else happens. I think the main focus is obviously now going to be midfield. We'll see what happens at left back, but the window's looking solid so far, man. Looking solid so far. And what do you lot think about Maxence Lacroix? You think I've given him enough credit in the vid? You lot think he's an elite signing? Do you think he's maybe that game changer centre back after all? Let me know your lot's thoughts in the comments, man. Like, comment, subscribe as well. Bless up.